Hi guys, so today I'm going to be doing a 3-book review. I've got so many books that I need to review at the moment, so I thought I'd just do 3 really short book reviews on 3 books I've read. They're all very different, so hopefully there's something that you might be interested in here. Let's just get started. So the first book clearly is my favourite book, and that is 10 Things I Hate About You by David Levitham. He wrote another book which I can't remember, but I know it's very popular. But yeah, you probably more know the film, of which it has Heath Ledger in it. They also did a TV series which I loved, but it wasn't as popular. But yeah, it's a really small book. I got this off of Amazon second hand. I got it for literally about £3 or £4. It is second hand, so it's a little bit dirty, it's got a little bit of pen marks, but overall the condition of it is pretty good. And it's got pictures in it which I really like, from the cast and the film. But yeah, this book, if you didn't know, the film is based off this book, and this book is based off the Shakespeare novel Taming of the Shrew, which I've never read. I know that is based off that. So if you have watched the film, the book is essentially the same. There is a few things that are slightly different. You get more of the perspective of each character, which is really nice, especially Patrick and Cameron, their perspectives, and I just love this book. If you don't know, it's about 2 sisters, Bianca and Kat, and Bianca wants to be the really popular girl in high school. She wants to get with this guy called Joey, but her sister is completely against everything. I don't want to say normal, but she's against all the typical things that happen in high school. She's very sort of rebellious and against the normal. She's a feminist, and she's very stubborn. She doesn't want to date boys, things like that. And it just evolves around trying to get Bianca tries to get her sister Kat to find someone to date so she can date, and it's just a really great, not only book but film. I really recommend you either read or watch the film because they're pretty identical. It's literally like they've just read the book in the film, which is nice. It's like a straight adaptation, and I think it was, after reading the book, the film was done really well. So there is a few little differences. Like I said, you get more information and perspective from each different character. There was a little bit where Kat actually acknowledged that she thought Patrick was really cute and she was maybe interested in him, which is something you didn't really get in the film. She didn't really let her feelings show that much about what she thought of him. She was quite reserved in that way. Also, I felt that Cameron seemed more desperate for Bianca in the book than in the film. I feel like in the film they might have toned that down a little bit, but he really was pining over her in the book. So there is a scene in the book that's not in the film, and I believe if you watch the bloopers it might be the scene when they're in the hallway and then they stumble across their teachers, and that is when Kat pulls Bianca out of class for embarrassing her and setting her up with Patrick, and that is a scene that you don't see in the film, and like I said, I think that was a scene that was cut, but is something that you can see a little bit in the bloopers at the end. So if you watch the film, at the end it finishes with Kat and Patrick stood by her car, kissing very romantically. They've made up, and then it cuts to the sort of end scene in the music. In the book, you see them make up, but then it cuts to Bianca and Cameron, and they're having a date on the field. So again, that's just a little way that it was different in the book. It probably ties up their relationship a little bit better in the book. You're sort of, in the film, you know they've got together, but it just, in the book you feel like they tie it up and make it a bit more known. So that's really all I've got to say about this book. It's very short. I read it within about 2 days. It's just a very quick, nice read, especially a great summer read. I cannot recommend this book enough. I'm pretty sure I gave it 5 out of 5 stars because 10 Things I Hate About You is my favourite film ever, and I love Heath Ledger. Yeah, So now let's get on to the second book. The second book I read was Alicia by Alicia Appelman German. She is a Holocaust survivor. This book was really different from any other sort of survivor book that I'd read. Usually a lot of the time it's about people's accounts in a camp or in a ghetto. Alicia is Jewish, her family was Jewish, but it was more about her her journey through different countries, trying to hide from the authorities and trying to earn money on fields and with farmers, and trying to just stay under the radar but still surviving and feeding for her family. So first off, I want to say this book is full of death, and they sort of tell you that straight off the bat, so it's not really a spoiler or anything. Alicia ends up losing all of her family in very tragic ways. It's not... In some books you can read about how people's families ever split up in a concentration camp and then they never saw them again. This was, each member was in a sense picked off and killed. It makes it sound a little bit like this book is made up, but it's not, and that's something that you have to realise throughout the book, is that this is someone's actual account and they did have to lose each family member one by one, and that is really hard to think about. So she loses her dad and then each sibling, and eventually it ends with her mother in a really tragic way. I think I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't my favourite, sadly. I felt like there was just a lot to read and it was quite... I don't know if I connected to the writing style as such, but I was finding it was taking a bit longer for me to read and I wasn't as engrossed. I found the story really interesting because, like I said, it was nothing that I'd sort of read before, and I read a lot of sort of biographies and things like that about people's experiences, but seeing how she had to go from farm to farm and walk miles to help earn a bit of money and get some food for her family, and she had to sort of take on the role of being a breadwinner, that was really interesting. So the book starts off with Alicia and her family living in Poland, and it starts with Poland being taken over by Russian control, and you see all the army come in and things like that. And throughout the book you don't really know who are the good people and who are the bad people. So throughout the book the allies keep changing in a way. You don't know who they can really trust, whether it's the Russians, the Germans, what's happening to the Polish people. And there is a map at the start which shows her journey through Europe, and she goes into Russia, into Poland, into Hungary, Austria, just a ton of different places throughout her journey. And she starts off quite young in this book, and then I think by the end of the book she's about 18, and you really see her, she has to grow up very quickly as a person. I mean, you would just have to in that environment, and you just get on with it because that is what you had to do to survive back then. And I just thought she was very wise and older than her years. She actually ends up setting up an orphanage for people like her who have been orphaned throughout the war, and she ends up trying to get to Israel, and it's just, she was a very humbling character. Well, she's not a character, she's a real person. That is what is so hard to sort of take in, that it's all based off a true story and that this person really struggled and had to go through all this, but at the end of it she did so much good, especially with setting up the orphanage for other children, and I found it just a very unique read compared to some of the other things I've read. So the final book I'm going to talk about today is 1912 Facts About the Titanic. This is by Lee William Meredith. I actually have met the author. We went to the Titanic exhibition that's in Tennessee about 3 or 4 years ago now, and he was there signing copies of his book. So my copy is signed, which is really cool, and I thought it was about time that I actually read this book. It's been sat on my to be read shelf for ages. And if you are interested in any way about the Titanic, this is the book for you. I mean, I have a slight interest for it. it definitely puts me off going on cruises and stuff, which is silly in a way because so much has changed since 100 years ago. But this is literally, it goes through so many different facts, through the building of the ship, to the actual hitting of the iceberg, to people that were on the ship and if they survived or not, how many tons of food went on. Like, it literally covers anything you could want to know about the Titanic. And when you're reading it, you realise why it sunk, because there were so many things they skipped over. I mean, there was no health and safety in those days, so they didn't do certain checks, or they would skim over it, or they didn't think something was necessary, or they rushed something because they didn't want to push the voyage date back. And because of that, and trying to get it set on that specific day to set sail, they just cut a lot of corners. They didn't think everything through. And you can tell why so many people lost their lives and why it sunk in the first place. I mean, there's so many things that I could point out about why this ship sunk. One of the things that was most sort of tragic in a way was the fact that there was so little lifeboats. Back in the days, they did have to have the minimum number required of lifeboats, but they didn't have to have enough lifeboats to cover everyone, and they didn't. They only had the absolute minimum of lifeboats that were needed to pass the law or whatever, but they did not count how many people would be on that ship and if everyone could fit in lifeboats if something was to happen. And I think they were all so naive in thinking that this ship was unsinkable. They really thought that it was the best ship ever, and then ironically it sank. There is a ton of different facts about passengers, from third class passengers to first class, and crew and cabin. And it was really interesting to read people's stories, tragically to see how many people lost members of their families. And there was accounts of newly wedded couples, and they decided to go down with the ship together rather than being split up. And there were stories of children separated from their family, and husbands that had to be separated from their wives. And there was even stories of people that survived. They got back into America on dry land, and then there was one man who a couple of years later got hit down by a New York taxi and died. So you never know when your time is going to be up, really. Like I said, this is really interesting. I read it within about 2 days. I mean, most of it is sort of bullet pointed, so you can really just quickly read through it. I did skim read bits and pieces of it. There's photos, and it's just really interesting. They break it up into different chapters, so it's easy to navigate through. They have little time schedules, so you can read it sort of minute to minute. And there is literally tons of facts in here. I'll probably end up stopping this video and thinking, oh, I should have put that fact in, that was really interesting. But hindsight is lovely. So I can't remember quite what I gave this on Goodreads. I think I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I probably wouldn't read it again, but I'm glad I've read it. And it's something that if you were doing a project on the Titanic at school, this would be a great book to have, because there is just so much information that you could use in here. And at the back it's got a glossary and an index, so I mean, it would be really easy to sort of go through if you needed information about something. So that is my 3 book reviews today. Hopefully this video isn't too long. I wanted to try and do some quick little book reviews for you and get these reviews out. I've got so many more videos to record for you. But yeah, I will see you in my next video. Bye guys!